What's the best way to optimize vitamin D in the winter? What about when it's rainy or cloudy? What's the best way to view the sunrise? Should I use a red light or infrared sauna, and what's the difference? We answer all these questions today and more, so make sure you stay tuned. Welcome back, my friends. My name is Sarah. I am known as Carnivore Yogi. Thank you so much for being here and clicking on today's video. Today, I have a really awesome chat that I had with Dr. Ghazvini over on Instagram just a couple days ago. I've had many requests to please put this up onto YouTube. I'm also considering putting it on my podcast as a bonus episode, surely because we had so much feedback from the first podcast that we did. So I will link that in the information section below in case you did not catch that first conversation. But many of you responded back with questions about how to keep your vitamin D up during the winter, what's the best way to eat if you're going to eat seasonally and with a circadian rhythm, how to use a spare D vitamin D lamp, what's the benefits of red light therapy. So we really dove into all of your questions, tried to answer them here, and I hope that you really do enjoy this video. A couple of links I'm going to put below the video as well is a link to Raw Optics. This is the brand of blue light blockers that I personally use. I use the yellow screen lenses during the day if I'm going to be on a device or indoors underneath really bad lighting without a window open. And I use the red light lenses if I wake up before the sunrise and I'm walking around my house, and after the sun goes down in the evening as well. So I will link those below. My discount code at Raw Optics is Carnivore Yogi. They are really the best quality. Matt Maruka, the owner, the founder, he worked personally with Dr. Jack Kruse for many, many years. And so it's a brand that I know actually works. It is what it says it is, and they're extremely comfortable. I'm also going to place a link for EMR Tech below this video. My code there is Carnivore Yogi 10 if you want a discount off over at EMR Tech. These are the red light devices that I personally use. Now you'll want to subscribe to the channel. I have an interview with Kruse, the owner of EMR Tech, coming out in a few weeks, and we really discussed more on the benefits of red light therapy. And in this interview, you'll see that Dr. Corey is not a big fan of some of the other red light devices out on the market. EMR Tech is also one that Jack Kruse endorses as well. So that is why I personally use it and recommend it to people that follow me as well. So I hope that that covers everything. If you guys have more questions, please do comment below the video. I'm so excited to share this with you. There is so much valuable information in this interview. So I hope you enjoy it, and I will talk with you guys again soon. Thank you. I'm so excited about this live stream with Dr. Ghazvini. I'm gonna wait for him to request to join, but I'm just gonna start talking. We did an awesome podcast. Oh, there he is. So Corey just requested to join a couple weeks ago that is up on my YouTube channel. So make sure that you guys watch that. And we just got so many amazing questions. There's his request. So we have piled this list of questions that you guys have had that we're going to answer with you here on today's live stream. There's Corey in your beautiful red lit room. I love it.
Yeah, it's actually monsoon outside right now, which is
it's pretty bad here, but I just opened a window.
Nonetheless, I'm still inside. I have my balanced light spectrum going on. I actually have a UV light behind me and red light, and I'm also making sure to wear the blue blocking glasses excuse me, during the day, because I know that there's artificial light spectrum coming out of the phone nonetheless.
Yes. Yeah, I don't have my glasses on. I should have gotten those. They're in the kitchen. But my screen is completely red. So I'm not even sure if the lighting is is okay, but I have my iPhone screen completely red to try to mitigate some of that. And I've got my window open here behind me. Yes, so
I had the door open, which is preferable for sure, but
yeah.
It's loud with the rain, so I figured I'd have to shut it and get myself situated with the lights that I have going on. How are you this morning?
I'm good. I just messaged you there about 5 minutes ago, and you can probably still hear them. We're three guys with leaf blowers right outside of my office window.
No,
I'm like, can we please not? Like, we're doing a talk on light, and I need to at least have my window open to not be a total hypocrite for this conversation. So can you guys finish? Because it's so, like, noise pollution drives me insane. It's just so loud. So
oh yeah, hilarious. Yeah, but I
yeah.
can't hear anything right now, so you sound perfect.
Okay, good. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I was just explaining before I brought you on that podcast that we did. I feel like I got, I interviewed Dr. Kruse the week before. I feel like I actually got more feedback and more really good questions from the podcast that we did than I even did from Dr. Kruse. So I was like super excited to chat again.
Sure. Yeah, I love watching Dr. Kruse interview that you did with him. I think it was fantastic. Hopefully you'll get the chance to get him on again. The great questions that you asked him.
Thank you. Well, speaking of questions, and if you guys want to know more about Corey, please go follow him. And a lot of these questions, I want to plug him really quickly before we dive into this. We want to give you guys a lot of information to help you, especially as we kind of go into the winter months. But if you really need someone to help you and to guide you through this process, Corey, you do coaching, correct?
That's right. Yeah, I'm an acupuncturist in the state of Florida. So I have a clinic here in Tallahassee where I see patients, but I do offer health coaching to people worldwide. So I'm accessible at any convenient time, any way that works for you, via phone, via Zoom. Just follow me on Instagram and we can contact each other there.
Yeah, and I connected with Corey from one of his clients that she's been following me for a while, and she connected me with Dr. Kruse, and she connected me with you, and she's like, you'll talk with Dr. Kruse and it'll be amazing and you'll learn a lot, but I really want you to speak with Dr. Corey, because I feel like he can just take what Dr. Kruse says and make it accessible and make sense to a lot of people. And she was 100% right on, and she's like, I'm a health coach and I hired Corey because I needed help, and he's just genius with a lot of the things he recommended for me that I just never thought about. So big plug, you guys go follow Corey. And if you really need extra help with some of this stuff we're going to talk about, if you're still left with questions, then work with him, look him up, work with him. And I think it would be great for you. So yeah.
I appreciate you saying that. That's a great compliment. Yeah. And it's an honor to work in the shadow of someone like Dr. Kruse as well.
Yeah, well, you do a wonderful job. So thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Well, speaking of questions, we have a lot. We have a lot of questions. I don't know if we will. Do you have time constraints? I didn't even ask you that. I know you have a clinic you're running.
This morning, actually, which worked out well. And as you know, I asked you to back the time up an hour to be able to make sure that I was available. So I'm ready to go. Let's get to it. I think we can get.
All right, guys. Well, here we go. So question number one, what is your philosophy on food and seasonal or circadian eating and fasting?
I think it's really important that we follow a seasonal affliction to food for a variety of reasons. I learned about the seasonal importance of food when I was in acupuncture school, and I didn't really understand the implications of it. But in reality, when you learn more about mitochondria and you learn what food really is to mitochondria, you start to find out that food isn't only energy, it's also information, right? And it's an information for what season it is in your environment. So our biological systems are so complex that we're just beginning to think that we can understand it, but I think we're a long way out from really knowing how important our environment truly is. And for our body to be able to understand what time of year it is and what environment we live in, it's important to eat the foods that are available in our local environment in that season. So whenever you're eating food that is not available in your local environment, that's not in season at your latitude, because it's more important of a latitude affliction, right? So like if you live at a really high latitude, like in Canada or places like that, you don't have a lot of options in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm.
And people ignore the fact because food is viewed in the modern perspective as energy, but it also contains information. So that's something that we really need to pay attention to. And same thing goes for light. You know, people consider light just a form of energy, but in reality, it also contains information. So manufactured food and manufactured light are essentially the same problem.
Mm.
Getting food that's coming from a location that has a completely different season than your current environment, you're providing your body with incorrect information to be able to adapt to your own environment, which is highly important, right?
Right.
And I know that you did that interview recently where you went into a deep dive on deuterium. So
Yeah.
deuterium has a seasonal affliction too when it comes to the types of fruits and vegetables that are available in your environment. And the foods that are available during the summer and early fall tend to be very high in deuterium. We're talking about a lot of mostly fruits, right? Like your melon and your pineapple, things like that. So when your environment, meaning your solar yield, doesn't allow for you to deplete deuterium appropriately, because strong solar sun helps your body deplete deuterium effectively. That's how it's designed to work. When your environment doesn't allow for that mechanism to work appropriately, and you're eating foods high in deuterium, meaning eating the grapes, the cherries, the pineapple, and you live somewhere like in Ontario or in New York or Rhode Island, you're not providing yourself with the environmental influence to deplete that deuterium back out. So you start to become a keeper of deuterium. You start to have dysfunctional mitochondria. And then we all know the things that come behind that. It could be pretty much anything when you really think about it. Mitochondrial dysfunction is the core root of all of the major modern diseases. So that's why it's so important to follow your seasonal affliction.
Yeah, when we were talking and I was mad at myself for not turning on the recording when we did our original podcast together, you really explained so brilliantly how there's a difference between eating a slice of watermelon on the beach in the middle of July than there is to eating, let's say, a banana in the middle of December, and how our body can actually process that, break it down, and use that, right?
Right. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think that I actually forgot to talk more about it, or we are talking about so many other things on the podcast. And that makes a huge difference whether you're inside or outside too. Yeah. So what's the difference between someone that decides to eat a piece of watermelon inside where there isn't any UV light versus outside where there's a ton of UV light during the day, or at night when there isn't any UV light, right? So, or if they live somewhere like, in Chicago and they're trying to eat a banana in December.
Right.
So we all know that whenever we eat a carbohydrate, or whenever we eat something that's high in sugars, that we get a glucose insulin response. And we need the insulin to work appropriately. Well, it turns out that insulin, to be able to connect to the cell appropriately, requires a process that needs the GLU4 receptor. Well, that GLU4 receptor, to be able to activate insulin response, also needs nitric oxide to be able to appropriately function. And we know that the best way for our bodies to make nitric oxide is to be in strong UV light, right?
Yes.
UV, whenever we expose ourselves to it, allows for global nitric oxide increase. That means you dilate all the blood vessels in your body, increasing blood flow and increasing nutrients to your body. But it also allows for the insulin to be able to appropriately connect to the cell, right? So if you eating a piece of watermelon inside or during the wintertime where you don't have appropriate nitric oxide, you're effectively burning all of your own body's stores up. And that could be an explanation for how something like insulin resistance occurs. It could also be an explanation for something like how eating out of season or eating indoors has an effect on something like your blood pressure, because we know that the endothelial function is directly modified by the amount of nitric oxide that your body can provide to dilute those vessels appropriately.
So fascinating. I love it. So would you say it's more appropriate for people to do things like a ketogenic diet or carnivore fasting? Those types of things would be a lot more appropriate during like winter time than they would be summertime.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All the carnivorous animals are more ketogenic during the wintertime. And it's not to say like, obviously a carnivore animal is ketogenic most of the year. But we know from the studies that have been done on polar bears, right, that they gain most of their weight in the fall because they eat a ton of berries that are available in their environment. And they get as fat as they can until they go into hibernation in the winter. And during the winter, while they're asleep, exposed to extreme cold, they become ketogenic.
Mm-hmm.
That ketosis and that sleep in the darkness deep in the cave also allows for their melatonin levels to go up through the roof. And so they're actually diabetic by the time they start the hibernation, right?
Wow.
Which is really interesting because it totally breaks down all of the insulin response and everything, destroys leptin in their body. So while they're asleep, during hibernation, they go into deep ketosis, melatonin levels through the roof, and when they wake up, they no longer have diabetes, and they have bigger muscles than they have any other time of the year, having done no exercise whatsoever. So you start to realize, is our body composition, is our hormonal response directly related to our food, or is it related to efficient sleep in our environment? I think showing that it's actually our environment.
I would agree. I mean, a lot of my followers know I've lost a good amount of weight this year and had some good body recomp. And it's because I changed my relationship with light. I mean, that was the fundamental thing that I changed. And it's been really remarkable. I've been so blessed to connect with you and Dr. Kruse and a lot of other people in this kind of quantum field here. And it's like,
if you live somewhere like New York, if you live anywhere at high latitudes, you know for sure that nature is telling you that you have to be ketonic during the wintertime because carbohydrates do not grow in those seasons where you live.
Yeah.
Not our rules. Those are the rules of nature, right?
Yeah. And so anybody watching, if you want to learn how to eat more seasonally or just know what's growing, connect with a local farm. I always tell people to go to www.eatwild.com. You'll connect with people in your area. You can find a local farmer. And I just got a huge haul. I did get some plant foods, for my family, but we got butternut squash. We got, some vegetables and some things that are seasonally grown right now, as well as a bunch of meats and stuff for broth. But that's how you start to eat seasonally, is you connect with the farmers around you and they'll sell you what's growing, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point to bring up. Also, there's a website, I think it's realmilk.com, and I'm pretty sure that it's part of the Weston A. Price organization that put that together.
Okay.
And that most of the local, that's a website that most of the local farms around the country have put their information up there together. So you can go to that website and find the farms in your area to be able to connect to be able to get local source foods, which is a really important thing.
Awesome. Ben says realmilk.com. I know Ben's into all this stuff. He's a good person to follow also, guys. So yeah, very cool. Well, I feel I'm like, we have so many questions, but that was just so awesome. Thank you for anything to kind of cap that out at all with the food conversation, or do you think we covered it all?
I think that's pretty much it. I mean, if I come up with something else, there's always more to talk about, right?
I know. There really is. It's so fascinating. Okay, so let me get to some of these other questions. Someone wants to know, after exposing ourselves to sunlight, should we wait to shower for a specific length of time for optimal absorption? If so, how long?
No, that's a bunch of bull. There's no such thing as that. Vitamin D is made inside your body, not on your skin. So there is no effect to taking a shower and washing off any of the vitamin D. As a matter of fact, we could get into that debate about hygiene. You know, our ancestors I assume that they had very poor hygiene, and that may have been for a very good particular reason. You know, I remember when I was growing up that if I'd been playing a lot outside and doing sports, you know, my mom, my siblings, and my cousins would be like, you know, holy crap, like, you smell terrible. And, you know, I didn't really notice it. And, you know, if I was in school and I was playing a lot outside and doing sports, nobody there ever really mentioned anything like that to me. And it wasn't until later on that I learned that, you know, we actually have our own specific pheromones that we release whenever we're actually sweating and, you know, having a really intense hygiene and using soap, washing our bodies a lot. It really affects our own production of pheromones. So, you know, that's one of the methods that Mother Nature programmed in to be able to allow us to find appropriate mates. I don't know if you've ever noticed the person that you're closest to, your partner usually smells fantastic to you, even though to other people, they may not agree. But there's also a programming that the people that are closest to us genetically, meaning our siblings and our family members, are detested by our body odor.
Really?
Yeah, and so that begin to make you think, like, is deodorant, is excessive hygiene really a good idea? It may not be, because there's also information there that our body is expressing about our environment to other people. It's really a whole quantum perspective. Not to say that anyone shouldn't take showers, but don't be worried about taking one after you've spent time out in the sun.
Yeah, I have gotten rid of all the antibacterial stuff in the house. Like, we use tallow for soap. We use Fancy Farm, which is linked in my bio. They make soap and lotion and things out of beef suet. So essentially my skincare program is beef suet. And I haven't worn deodorant in almost 3 years. I haven't needed it since I cut all the processed foods out of my diet. I stopped needing deodorant. So
You don't need it.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. My husband would tell me if I had BO, trust me. Awesome. Someone wants to know, and I have a lot of people that follow me that are office workers, parents, you know, so I get a lot of pushback when I start to discuss a lot of the quantum things, because people are like, that's not realistic. And someone like Dr. Kruse says, quit your job, move, you know. I get it, but that's not going to be reasonable for a lot of my viewers.
Sure.
So this person says, I work in an office from 9:30 to 4:30. Should I wear blue blockers at work or only at night when I'm home? There is a window near my desk, but it doesn't open. Is this a benefit? So that's a lot of things in one, but sure you can hit all of that.
So, you know, here's the thing. All of us live in a modern civilization. And I truly respect Dr. Kruse's message whenever he tells someone, you know, straight up, if you want to get better, you're going to need to move and you're going to need to find a different job. stuff like that. Because for someone that is suffering from a disease, that really is the final answer. So it may not be what he wants to say or what the person wants to hear, but
He's being truthful.
The truth hurts, right?
Yeah.
So if you do work a job like every single person on here does, you just have to be able to mitigate your environment to the best that you can. But just know, if you're sick, that may be the cause of your problem, or maybe obviously a major contribution. Since you can't open the window, one of the things that you could do is to add in more of the variation of the wavelengths that are available outside. You can get yourself some UV bulbs and put some lamps there in your office. You can get yourself red lights, add red light to your environment so that you can be able to balance the spectrum more appropriately. So you're bringing nature there into your office. Definitely always want to wear blue blocking glasses during the day and make sure that they're yellow tinted at the very least. The blue blockers that are clear are an absolute waste of money. I know for sure they don't do anything, or they definitely don't do enough, right, to make any significant difference. You need to use software on any of the devices that you have, like Iris. Yeah, Iris is the best. Flux is another one. If you have a MacBook, you can use something called Night Tone. I found that works really well as well. And if your office doesn't allow for you to put the software on the computer, you can get something called Ruby Lux, which are these films that go over the screen, and that actually works better than the software anyway. And so those are things that someone could do if they work that type of lifestyle. But you always want to make sure, nevertheless, that you're going outside as often as you can. Even 5 minutes makes a huge difference.
Would you say also that someone should wear, because I just went to a meeting and it's fluorescent lighting, it's awful. So that's why I still have my sweater on, and I was wearing my yellow tinted blue blockers in that meeting because there's no windows open. So would you also say someone for extra protection would probably want to wear long sleeves in that environment as well? Keep the skin as covered as possible, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. We have melanopsin all over our bodies. So that's the blue light detector in your body, and it's mostly in your eyes. So your eyes are by far 90% of the problem.
Okay.
But you always want to wear as much clothing as you can anytime you're around artificial light as well. Yeah, so it's really not a good idea to have, tank tops or any open clothing. Make sure that you're covering up any of your vital organs, your eyes more importantly. So your thyroid is actually right here, and so what you can do is wear a scarf, wear something that covers it up like a turtleneck or something like that, because blue light does penetrate the skin as well.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. Let's see. Oh, I had a question to add into that. The light coming through a window that's a closed window, not so good for your eyes, right? Not so good for you, or?
No, any of the modern glass is made to create an energy efficient environment for the home or for the building, right? So modern glass blocks most of the infrared light. It blocks a lot of red light. It blocks actually most of the UV light, if not all the UV light, right? Because those are the wavelengths of light that actually heat up the home the most. So even this glass behind me, unfortunately, is really not good. So don't be fooled by, so-called natural lighting by thinking that, just because you have windows that going there, you're actually getting some sun exposure. It's in no way the same thing at all. And you're not getting any of the most important wavelengths. So glass is a big hell no.
Yeah, we try to crack a window in every room that we're in. And anytime I'm in the car, even if it's raining, I have the window cracked. If it's not raining, the moonroof is open. So it's
good advice. That's things that you have to do to be able to mitigate a modern environment.
Yeah, exactly. Someone wants to know tips on getting UV exposure on rainy and cloudy days, or even in a rainy, cloudy environment. Does it have to be direct sunlight? And we just answered that, is an open window any benefit, even on a rainy day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when it's a rainy day like it is here, you still want to be outside because there's a ton more light outside, actually hundreds of times more light outside than there is inside, even on the cloudiest of days. And it turns out that if it is totally overcast, UV light doesn't penetrate through those clouds very well. So you're not getting very much UV or any if it's very cloudy outside. But that doesn't matter because you're still getting all of the infrared wavelengths of light. Those are the slow, long penetrating wavelengths, which your mitochondria are paying most attention to. So it doesn't matter how cloudy it is, being outside is always better than being inside. You know, if we were to summarize everything that we're going over here and just say, the more time you spend outside, the healthier you'll be and the longer you're going to live. That's as easy as it really is. And it sounds ridiculously too simple and like it's a joke, but you know, I truly believe the more I learn and the older I get, Mother Nature puts the simplest answer right in front of our face, and it's really always that easy, and the low-hanging fruit can help you more than the most complicated solutions that you come up with.
Yeah, and you know, now that I coach people, I'm a certified nutrition coach, and I've been trying to help people mainly through diet intervention. And this year has been like a mind explosion for me because I have certain clients that were doing everything with food. I mean, they're doing everything perfect with food. And then once I started getting into all of this type of, you know, the real stuff, like you just said, one of my most tough clients that just can't lose weight, Hashimoto's, all the things, she has to be at work before the sun comes up, and her job is tech. So she is literally on computers indoors all day with no break to go outside. And she can't lose weight and can't get better no matter how perfectly that she eats. And I'm like, okay,
I know what it's like.
we got to mitigate this. If you want to get better, we're going to have to make some changes, and you might have to find a different job. I hate to tell you that, but I think it's killing you. I think it's really, I've never seen anyone eat this perfectly before and still be that sick. And I wouldn't have believed it myself a few years ago until I went through the experience I've been through this year with having dramatic weight loss and body recomp from just changing my relationship with light, honestly.
Yeah, you know, something else that's really important, you know, what else causes inflammation if you work in like a tech job somewhere like that? You're in a ton of Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And I tried to explain this before to you, so hopefully you've made some effort to mitigate this. But
We have.
unlike most of the people that are probably on this call right now, I'm actually connected to hardwired internet on the phone right now, and I'm on airplane mode. And I don't use any kind of Wi-Fi, and I never would. So unless it's an emergency, like, you know, I have to access something at the airport or something like that. But Wi-Fi is actually a form of light. Electromagnetic fields are beyond the visible light spectrum, and our body is always paying attention to electromagnetic fields. That's exactly how our body modulates its own messaging within itself, right? So you really start to think like, how come the food is a big problem? Or how come we think the food is a big problem, right? And it's actually because the evolution of food doesn't equate to the evolution of the human being. Well, the evolution of electromagnetic technology doesn't equate to the evolution of our biological systems either. And that's exactly how the messaging occurs within our own bodies. So that's an equal problem. And so I hope that you've done something. You said that you've changed some of your lifestyle too, so your environment's really important for that reason as well. It's not only the visible light.
Oh yeah, definitely. And my daughter, who's non-speaking autistic, I don't know if I told you this, but she said when the Wi-Fi is on, it sounds like the walls are screaming. And I
Yeah,
was like, what? And she's like, and if the TV is on, even if there's no sound coming out of it, the buzzing is so loud that it gives me a headache. And that's when I was like, oh crap, like this is real. This is 100% real. She's just extremely, extremely sensitive. But no one wants to hear this stuff because we like our Netflix and we like our Wi-Fi and we like these conveniences. But
I don't like
well, you know what it does to our health. You know exactly what it does to your health. And most people, they kind of just, I was that way. I wore AirPods for, which I know we kind of chatted about those, but I wore those up until I really learned how harmful those were. And basically I was like microwaving my head. And most people still don't even do that.
AirPods. Yeah.
Hmm?
Wearing AirPods for someone that is conscious of their health, that considers themselves someone that has a holistic perspective, is just about the dumbest thing I have ever seen anyone do. Because with radiation, with exposure to electromagnetic fields, it actually works on all of electromagnetic radiation can be mitigated on something called the, dose makes the toxin. It's a dose
Mm-hmm.
response. And the reason that having AirPods in your head is so much worse than anything else is it is to the most vital organs, right?
Where all the
Literally putting it inside
mitochondria.
your head, right? Where
Yep.
all of the brain's mechanisms are so sensitive, right? So when you're exposing yourself to something like your phone or to AirPods, it always has to do with the distance, right? Like if you're having to use your phone, keeping it away from your head, keeping it 6 feet away from yourself is always a major difference, right? It's an exponential difference. It's a really big deal for people to know that because a lot of women tend to keep their phone here in their bra, or a lot of
Yep.
their phone, in their front pocket. And then we wonder why, prostate cancer is going up through the roof or breast cancer is going up through the roof. I'm not saying that that's the only reason, but I'm saying we've always known that electromagnetic radiation was a problem. And when we know that definitively, when we understand it, we have to be able to mitigate what we have control over.
Right.
So when you're exposing yourself to something like your phone or to AirPods, it always has to do with the distance, right? Like if you're having to use your phone, keeping it away from your head, keeping it 6 feet away from yourself is always a major difference, right? It's an exponential difference. It's a really big deal for people to know that because a lot of women tend to keep their phone here in their bra, or a lot of
Yep.
their phone, in their front pocket. And then we wonder why, prostate cancer is going up through the roof or breast cancer is going up through the roof. I'm not saying that that's the only reason, but I'm saying we've always known that electromagnetic radiation was a problem. And when we know that definitively, when we understand it, we have to be able to mitigate what we have control over.
Right. It's stress to the body, and
It is.
yeah, that's what causes mitochondria breakdown is stress, if you want to put it very, very generally. So when we're doing those types of things, we're causing more stress to the body, essentially.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I have a selfish question, and somebody else threw it up in the chat. What are your thoughts on tanning beds in the winter?
Mm-hmm. You know, that question is more complicated than it seems because something like that is would involve individual context,
Mm.
and there really is no one size fits all advice. When it comes to that, I don't have a huge problem with using tanning beds, but you have to know how to do it appropriately. And you definitely don't want to use a tanning bed without having red and infrared light there to help balance out the spectrum. I would say, unless you have someone that can give you advice on how to use a tanning bed appropriately, it may not be a good idea to just go to the tanning salon and use something like that.
Yeah, that's where you guys want to hire Corey to help you with these types of things, because, you know, myself, before I talked to Corey, had a spare vitamin D lamp, thought I've been laying out in the sun, I've got this great solar callus, burned myself one of the worst burns I've ever had with that spare vitamin D lamp. And then I talked to Corey and he's like, you got to take that guy outside, look at the sun, use it in conjunction with a red light. It's nuanced, because I think that we can say, oh, I'll just go in the tanning bed because it's winter, or I'll just use my spare vitamin D lamp because it's winter. But there's got to be an individual approach to these things, because they can burn your skin and they can have an element of, I don't want to say, I don't know, danger, if that's the right word, if you would agree with that. But we have to be careful, right?
You have to be super careful when you're using stuff like that. Yeah. Even the light, you know, like a photobiomodulation device, less is always more.
Mm.
And, you know, now that those things are exploding onto the market, I foresee people thinking that, you know, that there's no reason not to use it all the time.
Mm.
But excessive use of it is not gonna get you anywhere. Like, you really need to know how to use those things appropriately, and it's on an individualized basis for sure.
Yeah, what would be if someone, you know, did too much red light therapy? What are some of the possible implications of that? Say they're doing like 2-3 hours a day, you know, they're just like, more is better. They're a person like me who's like, if a 24-hour fast is good, a 7-day fast must be better. And then
Mm-hmm. Well, really, there isn't a lot of data to show what the negative side effects are yet, because it hasn't been up until recently that individuals had access to photobiomodulation devices in their own home. And realistically, it's just like there's a biphasic response, meaning that, you know, up to 20 minutes you have an excellent effect, and beyond that, we know that you're not having any effect at all, or you're actually causing a reaction that you're not helping yourself at all. We don't know what the effects are. Let's just put it out that way. We don't know. And one thing we do know, though, is that excessive red light exposure to our eyes can cause cataracts. We know that from the welders that have been exposed to those types of lights for a long time. So people really need to pay attention to that. Any form of artificial light poses some risk, and that's just the way it is. So you want to pay attention to things like that.
got it. And someone, I guess we'll jump into a couple of these red light questions, because I have a couple of those. What would you say if someone did want to do red light therapy? What would be the optimal time of day to do that?
I think that any time during the day is fine. You just don't want to do anything more than 20 minutes. You don't want to do it. You don't want to go, you know, all the time. Realistically, I think once a day is more than enough. But it depends on what problem you're actually trying to treat yourself for. You know, a lot of us make the mistake of using photobiomodulation lights at night.
Mm-hmm.
I've begun to question whether or not I think that's the best idea, because I don't know if I truly believe that, you know, activating those parts of the mitochondria in the evening time is advantageous. Even though in the past, red light therapy was something that our ancestors did use, they just called it campfire.
Right.
So even then, it probably wasn't a good idea to do that. So I think, as long as the sun is out, any time is probably just as good as the other. And you probably want to make sure you're staying away from doing that kind of thing at night.
Gotcha. So when you say like 20 minutes, and this is not medical advice, guys, or advice to take and do it, it's just me questioning, would you say like 20 minutes on each side if you have a device where you turn, or just 20 minutes total?
I'd say 20 minutes total.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. That's great information. And someone wants to know, what's the difference between an infrared sauna and red light therapy, and what are the benefits of each one?
I think infrared sauna sucks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, there's a ton of EMF with devices like that, non-native EMF, I should say. There's a ton of non-native EMF with most of the red lights on the market actually as well. So you really always want to make sure that when you get a photobiomodulation device, that you're getting one that's not shitty one, like a Juve.
Yeah, that's Dr. Kruse likes the EMR tech. That's the one I use.
Yeah, those are a good photobiomodulation device. There are others, but I should say infrared exposure is a good thing. You can always get it outside for free.
Right.
I don't know why anyone would waste their money using an infrared sauna for that reason.
Gotcha. Okay. Someone wants to know, what do you do if you wake up before sunrise? Should you put on blue blockers? Should they be the red ones, or are the yellow okay? Or should you turn on a red light device to illuminate the home?
As soon as you wake up, you always want to put on blue blockers before you expose your eyes to any kind of light, or artificial light, I should say. Because
I'm beside the bed.
because the first light signals that you actually get into your eyes are going to be a Zeitgeber, meaning that's the light that programs your eyes the most, right? Because as you've been asleep, your body has assimilated all the information from the day and has absorbed all the light that you've been exposed to, and like the sponge, it's ready and waiting first thing in the morning to receive light activation. So you don't want to be around any artificial light until you get to the sunrise. And I would say that you want to use the red blue blockers if you wake up before the sun, for sure. And you want to stay away from artificial light before the sun comes up. In my opinion, if you choose to do that, that's up to you. If you choose to use a red light before the sun comes up, but it doesn't mean it's a good idea, because you're activating clocks prior to the connection with nature, and you're actually activating your body to be able to start doing functional things before you actually get to the sunrise. And that can make you wake up earlier and earlier and earlier every day that you make that mistake. So it's really not.
So one of the worst things people could probably do is pick up their phone when they wake up before they put on glasses or even go outside or anything, right?
Yeah, you never want to do that.
Yeah, no.
Never want to look at the phone early in the morning.
I agree. Yeah, I used to do that horribly, and now it's like as soon as I wake up, glasses are on, I'll meditate, chill, or go ahead and start being outside and walking without the glasses on and just wait for the sun to come up. But I don't look at my phone. I try not to look at my phone until after sun's been up and I've been outside for a little bit, and then use protection when I do. Yeah.
Exactly how you do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. This is one I get a lot. I'm curious your thoughts on this. People say that they have been out in the sun all summer and their vitamin D is still really low, like in the 30s. And I don't know if this person has been doing sunrise or not. But I do have people that say I've been out in the sun all summer and my vitamin D is still low. So what's the deal with that?
There's no way to really know without having all of their personal information to be able to understand what their environment is and what the decisions that they're making are. It depends on where you live. If you live somewhere further south, then you would expect to definitely have a higher vitamin D level. If you live somewhere further north, then you may not be surprised that they struggle to, get a higher 25-hydroxy vitamin D test. But if I could tell you the reason that most people struggle with that problem, and I've had people ask me the same question a lot recently. The most problem that people have is non-native EMF exposure, because it's those wavelengths of microwaves that are actually dehydrating you, right? So when you're not having appropriate cellular hydration, the vitamin D requires an isomerization step, meaning you need to have proper hydration to be able to make vitamin D in your body, right?
Right.
So if you're exposed to a ton of non-native EMF, like you're always on Instagram Live, or you're always on your phone, you're always on Wi-Fi, you're dumb enough to have an Air Watch or an AirPods on your body, you're constantly dehydrating yourself, and that's not allowing your body to be able to produce the amount of vitamin D that a normal person would, that's being, spending a ton of time outside in the sun. And most of the time you find people that live in, urban regions, especially like Los Angeles, they always have crappy vitamin D, and they even spend a ton of time outside, and they don't wear a lot of clothes,
Yep. Yeah, it's a new, one of my clients had that this summer. She was outside using D-Minder every single day, and still at the end of the summer, her vitamin D was a 30. And I was like, well, I need to ask about that one, because I actually see it way more commonly than not. I'm lucky mine got up over 100 this summer, so I'm pretty happy. Yeah, with just the sun. So I feel like the stuff I'm doing is working. Sacrifice. I don't see it as sacrifices anymore. People think it's crazy. I'm trying to always be outside barefoot as much as possible, go hiking outside of the city as much as I can, and always see sunrise, like things like that. It's an effort I have to put in, but I feel so good. It's like, I don't want to stop doing it. I want to do more of that. That's, my body is just like, thank you. And it's responding really well. So when I put up the stuff about, the hormone vitamin D, when I put up the stuff about EMF or, any of that stuff, I get a ton of pushback from people. And it's like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm just presenting the information to you guys that I'm trying to help you. I'm not trying to shame you or make you feel bad. I'm just trying to put an awareness out there that it's not just about getting the perfect protein and fat macros. Like, everyone's so hyper focused on food, and it's only going to get you so far, right?
That's the problem with our modern perspective on biology, is that we're so deep in the past. We're addicted to having to perceive things like a structural component or a molecular component, within our body, to be able to explain how and what is happening inside of ourselves. But, and that's really the old model of science. Physics has gone away from that and is already spent a lot of time focusing in on, electromagnetic fields and the influence of invisible energies that are having a much more dramatic effect than the molecules themselves. But biology, unfortunately, is still addicted to the molecular perspective of viewing the body as sort of like a machine, and the doctor is viewed as sort of this engineer that needs to find which part of the engine or which part of the fuel is the problem, but it's much more than that, right? And
Right.
we're really lagging behind there. And I'm hoping that by doing things like this, we'll encourage people that are smarter than ourselves to be able to look into things like that, and to consider, moving beyond the archaic perspective, that there's always some structural or molecular component that's having a major influence, because that's the old way of thinking, and modern science has taken us a lot further.
Right. And the other bit of pushback that I get, huge pushback, is supplementing. I take D3 and K2, and my doctor says to take it, and my functional medicine doctor says to take it, and everyone right now is pushing supplemental D3 K2. Can we just briefly touch on that? I know it's but
Mm-hmm.
get very triggered when I tell them probably not the best idea for you to do that, right?
No, it's not. Supplemental vitamin D is in no way, shape, or form equivalent to the vitamin D that your body makes via the signals from nature. And, if you want to believe that and you want to trust the supplement makers, go ahead. But truth be told, they're made in a lab, and most of those companies have roots tied to big pharma.
Mm.
So that's why you have, magazines like Life Extension coming out with all of these publications and studies to try and push all of these supplements, because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And if you want to give them your money, go ahead, but I don't think it's going to help you at all.
Right.
And, we know that there's a problem there in the supplement industry, and vitamin D and melatonin are, two of the most popular supplements on the market.
Oh yeah.
You're totally wasting your money, because those are hormones that we have the capability of making in our own body for free if you just stop doing all the dumb shit you're doing with light. And so, it's up to the individual, and I wouldn't worry about, any of the people that give you shit for trying to tell them the truth. Just let them do whatever they want to do, and they'll have to come to terms with reality at some point.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I'm not trying to shame anybody for taking supplements or anything like that, because I have taken them and there's still a couple that I take, but no D3, no melatonin, none of that stuff, because it will also kind of downregulate your body's ability to make those things naturally, correct? What does that do to your endogenous production of those things?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So, okay. Let's see. So someone says, what can I do if I can't afford a Sperity vitamin D lamp and I live up north?
Best thing that you could do is still go outside as often as you can, no matter what. Spending time outdoors is going to allow you to get all of the other wavelengths of light. Vitamin D is made from UVB exposure. If you live in a northern latitude, there will be several months out of the wintertime that you won't be able to get that exposure to be able to make vitamin D. So, if you can't afford a Sperity vitamin D lamp, that's fine. I'm not really crazy about those things anyway, but you definitely want to still go outside, because UVA exposure and red infrared exposure are still a huge big deal. But if you're someone that is really concerned about it the most and you want to do everything that you can, you need to become cold adapted.
Yes.
People that lived in northern latitudes, our ancestors, prior to the technological revolution, whenever they were living in those areas, they froze their ass off. And believe it or not, there's a biological benefit to being cold adapted, because of the way that it condenses your hormones. So you need less to be able to achieve more. And vitamin D is a hormone.
Gotcha. So cold therapy, there's the big plug for that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I just started my cold showers again because I know the water is going to get progressively colder as it gets colder outside. And so I'm like just trying to get myself ramped up for it now that we're changing weather just a little bit. But I love cold therapy, but it does take some time to get adapted, and that can help as well during winter when we're not getting as much D from being outside, right?
Yeah, but I could tell you though, a cold shower is not enough. I'm talking
I
about
gotta
really,
do a plunge.
yeah.
Yeah, I hate those. I'll do them, but I hate them so much.
You just you haven't worked your way up to it. Yeah, it's not as hard as you really think. You know, first couple of times that you do it, it is hard.
Yeah.
But once you become adapted to it, once you figure out how to do it, you will start to love it. Like the same way that you're describing your new affinity for the sun.
Mm.
I love the cold bath. It's one of the greatest feelings that you'll ever have.
All right. Well, I'm leaving today here with homework to start getting myself better with the cold bath. That's my next goal. So you guys watching, I'll keep you updated on that. This is one that's interesting. The light that comes in through the windshield, when you're driving, is that bad for your eyes? And should you wear sunglasses in that one instance, that one situation to protect your eyes?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
The light that comes in through the windshield is an unnatural spectrum because the windshield, the same way that we were talking about glass earlier, blocks UV, blocks infrared to a certain degree. So when you're driving a car, you always want to have your window at least cracked, but preferably all the windows down. Somehow a fly got up in here whenever I had the door open earlier. So, and that balances out the spectrum. But sunglasses are always a hell no.
Okay.
That doesn't do anything for that particular problem at all. And there's no benefit to wearing sunglasses, at any time. The only time I would have any type of protection like that would be if I were doing welding or something crazy with, some really crazy artificial wavelengths of light that are extremely bright. But if you were wearing blue blockers, that would be a better idea, like the yellow ones that I have on now.
Gotcha.
And that you want to mitigate. But if you have the windows down, it's not that big of a deal.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I threw away all my sunglasses a long time. I haven't worn any in like 3 years, but so I'm used to it now, and I live in Georgia. It can be pretty bright and sunny here some days, especially in the summer. And you just crack your windows, open the moonroof, you get used to it. But this is a great lead into another question that says, why are someone's eyes so sensitive to the sun? I get this question all the time. Why are my eyes tearing up whenever I try to go outside for sunrise? Why am I so sensitive to sun?
That's because, like we were talking about earlier, the amount of light that you're exposed to when you're outside is hundreds and hundreds of times more. Like the lux is incomparable. It's like exponentially more light outside. That's even on a cloudy day. You have a ton more light outside than you'll ever get inside. And so your eyes, if they're sensitive whenever you're going outside, your pupillary sphincters are weakened because you're living in an artificial environment. And most of the time, it has to do with UV. Ultraviolet light is the wavelength of light that contracts your pupils the most. So the pupillary sphincter becomes really weak, and it's something that with people that live a chronically indoor lifestyle, when they go outside, their eyes really hurt. Or they say they need to wear sunglasses, because being outside makes their eyes really, have pain in their eyes, or they have to squint like hell. And that's because the sunglasses also block the UV light, right? So there's information in the literature that's showing that it's not only, our retina and brain's assimilation of the specific wavelengths to how it affects our moods, and how, different wavelengths of light going into our eyes can produce different hormones in our own body. It's also, to the degree that our pupillary sphincter is contracting. So what happens when you actually live chronically indoors, or you wear sunglasses every time you go outside, you're not getting that effect. And so basically you're creating your own personal seasonal affective disorder.
Ah.
Because that's the same reason that people that live in northern latitudes have different psychological afflictions during the wintertime, because there's such a reduction in their light exposure in their environment.
Fascinating. Yeah, I mean, I would say I've heard on Dr. Kruse say before, just simply if you start tearing up, or you have like your eyes are really sensitive, then that just essentially means you have a sunlight deficiency. Like you just essentially that's what it means, right?
Well, yeah, for sure, because you're not used to being exposed to high intense light like you're designed to be, outside in nature, and not indoors in an electric box or outside with sunglasses on. It's the same thing, for people that, work inside all the time, and then they decide, one day, July 4th, that they want to go to the beach at, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they get burned to hell. And then they say, oh shit, the sun is terrible. Look what it did to me. I was sick for 3 or 4 days. And it's really because, no, it's because you live in an artificial environment that's making your body so weak and sensitive to the environment. And that's why we actually get so pale when we don't go out in the sun. It's not because, it's really because our bodies are trying to become more and more transparent to be able to get any amount of those wavelengths we possibly can as soon as we're outside, right?
That is so fascinating. I never thought about it that way. Wow.
Yeah, realistically, that's what happened to humans when they moved out of equatorial Africa into northern Europe, right? All the original humans we know from Africa, and that they were black people, right? All of us come from Africa. And so if you think about it that way, white people are actually a mutation form of the human, because they moved into an environment that was radically different than the one that humans originated in. And they developed all these changes that allowed for them to do well in the environment that they were in, right? But, unfortunately, living a chronically indoors lifestyle is in no way the same thing as that.
Yeah, I mean, I know I have Nordic blood. I've got the blue eyes and blonde hair and, super pale, but this year I've got a tan. But I built up to that. And the other part of that is I did sunrise every single day. I did not miss a sunrise. If I'm going to be outside in the middle of the day in a bikini, I got to get sunrise, because isn't that, maybe you can explain this a little bit better. It's kind of like a natural sunscreen by getting that red light exposure early on in the day. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at sunrise, there isn't any UV for around the first half hour, depending on where you are and what season it is, where you are. So for that first half hour, you're getting a ton of infrared and red light that's penetrating deep into, almost 30 centimeters. And all that is preconditioning your tissues for strong UV when it shows up, right? Mm-hmm. So there's this progression of a dim morning sunrise to a very intense solar noon that your body needs to be able to prepare for the intense UV that comes out during the middle of the day. And that's why it's always more important to get AM light than any other time of the day. So that's why you see people get sunburn whenever they go outside. They spend all their morning sleeping in until 11:30, and then they want to go somewhere and eat brunch, and then they don't go outside until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they wonder why it feels so intense. Your body hasn't had an appropriate signal to be able to prepare for that adaptation that the day has.
Exactly. And that's why if someone wants to use something, and again, this is not recommendations for you guys, but if someone wants to use like Asperity Or like we were talking about earlier with the tanning bed, you would probably want to have some red light exposure along with that as well, right? That's the reason why.
Personal context.
Yeah. Yeah. You're so good with that. Let's see. This was an interesting, I'm going to scroll back up to this comment here. I am missing some of your comments, guys. It says, to be fair, some of us are very fair skinned and we can't be in the intense sun without burning. I'm not able to tan at all. I struggle to keep my vitamin D up as a result. What would you say to that comment? Because I get a lot of comments like that. Would love to hear what you got to say about that.
You need more AM light. You need to see the sunrise naked. You need to be exposed to all of the early morning sunlight from sunrise until about 11:30 a.m. And you need to get as much as that as you can religiously. And by doing so, you're going to build what's called a solar callus. And that's going to be able to allow you to get exposure to the more intense wavelengths like UVB that are present at solar noon. So you work your way up to it by doing that. And if you don't tan well, it's because you become too sensitive due to the environment that you live in. So AM light is the answer to that question.
That's great. And there was another question on there about people that have blue eyes or brown eyes, and are blue eyes more sensitive to the sun than the brown eyes, or is that a myth?
Yeah, they are.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, blue eyes are more sensitive to the sun for sure. Like that's why you see most people that have blue eyes are.
I was a chronic sunglasses person. Like I could, because my eyes they're blue, but they're almost kind of gray. And so I was always like, oh, I can't. But now, no sunglasses for 3 years. But that's actually valid, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Anyone that has dark skin almost always has dark eyes, right? You notice that? And anyone that has lighter skin almost always has lighter eyes, or more often. That's where you find them. So it's also the same adaptation, the same mutation that we were describing earlier throughout human evolution. As humans moved into higher latitudes where they had a much deeper winter with a low solar yield, the transparency of their tissues started to degrade so that they could be able to allow more light in where it wasn't in their environment.
And does that also explain, kind of why people with darker skin color, they actually need more sun to synthesize the D into their body, right?
Yeah, that's exactly why.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've listened to so many interesting things about just people having poor health conditions, and someone with darker skin living in, let's say, like Michigan is probably going to have a lot worse health than a darker skinned person living in, like, let's say Miami. They're going to run into a lot more complications, would you say?
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, because the darker your skin is, the more difficult that it is for light to be able to get into there, because it's like, so much melanin is actually not allowing for deep penetration. So you're not getting the same effect. The darker your skin is, the more time you need to spend outside. And that's why the person that said that they had such a pale skin and they weren't tan at all gets sunburn easily.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. Let's see. If someone got a blood test to pick up vitamin D levels would it pick up supplements versus the sun? Would you be able to tell that from a blood test? Is there such a thing?
If you're testing 25 hydroxy vitamin D levels, that's just the blood plasma level of vitamin D. So the test won't know the difference from if you're using a supplement. It won't know the difference between that and the sun. It's just going to show up in the same test.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And someone just commented, it says, I'm Black in the UK and my vitamin D is always low.
Yeah. You're not the only one in the UK that has low vitamin D. It's a really poor environment for someone that's trying to have optimal health. Not only is it really high latitude, but it tends to be crappy weather all the time, from what I've heard anyway. So that's something that you really want to try and learn about, how your environment is going to affect your vitamin D level. For someone like you, I would say you want to take trips as often as you can somewhere else further south to be able to allow the correct exposures to get that vitamin D level up.
Yeah, that's the biggest question of all the questions that I get. The repeating question is like, how do I handle it? You know, I live here, I live in UK, I live in these different places. How do I handle the cold, dark winter for months on end? Like, what am I even supposed to do about that? And would you say just travel? Is that, what would you say?
Yeah, if you're not getting the appropriate light exposure that you need in your environment and it's cold where you live, then cold is the signal that you need to get, right? And you need to become ketonic. You definitely want to eat a lot more seafood during the winter in places like that. If seafood has a lot of dietary vitamin D, and you want to eat things like, grass-fed beef liver.
Mm.
Gary made that comment earlier on here. Really cool, and that is a good solution for a lot of people. But you still need to get cold.
Yeah.
You need to get cold exposure and learn how to become cold adapted. Those are things that are really going to help someone like that.
Cool. Let's see. One more, I guess a couple more questions about grounding devices. I know we talked in our podcast about people just really needing to be outside grounding barefoot, get off the power grid, lay down in the woods. What are your thoughts on grounding devices? And are there any that you recommend if you like them?
They all suck. Actually, I would never use anything like that. You know what? They don't necessarily suck. I should say plugging it into the wall sucks, right?
Mm.
If you want to use a grounding device, what you want to do is make sure to run a wire outside into a grounding rod into the ground, right? If you're using like a grounding pad or something that you put on your mattress or something like that. But you also need to make sure that, wherever you're putting that grounding rod is really far away from any of the electric power lines that may be in the ground. But that's really the only way to do that.
Got it. So probably not something that people really need to invest in, right?
Well, if you're using a grounding pad, that means that you're inside. So you already know, like, this person's not really thinking the way that they need to be thinking. But yeah, if you're going to use one, you have to ground it to the ground outside.
Got it. And Ben wants to know, what about PEMF? I've wanted to know about that as well. It's a good question.
I really don't trust pulse EMF because the real guru, Robert O. Becker, which is...
I'm reading the book right now.
Oh, you're reading the Body Electric?
Yeah.
That's a great book.
Yeah.
So he's really the head honcho when it comes to all of the information that we have to be able to understand how our body is truly an electrical organism. And he was purely adamant about resisting pulse EMF devices. So I'm always hesitant to use anything like that, because someone that was so well informed and understood the mechanisms long before his time, I think that he always made sure to leave that point in his literature. So pulse EMF is something I never use.
Got it. Okay, cool. So you don't have to spend $5,000 on one of those mats. I think we got to all of the questions that we went that were sent in. But I guess someone wanted to know up here if you have. Are you pressed? Do you need to go pretty soon, or you have a couple more minutes?
I can go for a few more.
Okay. I think I'm trying to scroll back and see some of the comments here. Someone wanted to know about prescription glasses. I know we don't want to do those for sunrise, sunset, contacts, and LASIK. If we could talk, what your thoughts are on LASIK and some regular glasses.
Yeah, if you can avoid getting surgery at any time, anywhere, it's always a good idea, right? And if you have to wear glasses, I know that that's probably an inconvenience, but um, all of the electromagnetic signals in our body are truly important to be able to relay information. And our eyes are the most important organ in our body to relay information, to our brain, and for our brain to be able to function all of our hormonal pathways. And the way that those signals get carried off through the most part beyond that are actually the acupuncture channels, right? So our entire body has these acupuncture channels that are like water flowing rivers, right? And in that water, that's where the light signals appropriately. And anytime that you cut those channels, they never heal back the way that they were initially designed, right?
Yeah.
Anytime you can avoid surgery, it's also always a good idea. So elective surgery is never going to help you. And if you have poor vision, you can help reverse that to some degree. And I do know people that have changed their light environment, and over a period of time, they have had improvements. You should read the book Health and Light by John Ott. He actually talks about how he improved his own eyesight. And if you're outside, you always want to take your glasses off. Contacts are always a bad idea, realistically, because of the fact that your lens of your eye receives most of its oxygen from the exterior environment. It doesn't get very much oxygen from blood flow at all. So around 95% of the oxygen your lens gets is from the exterior environment. So you should always choose glasses instead of, any kind of contacts, for sure.
Got it. That makes sense. I did actually lose or forget one question. Do people lose the ability as they get older to convert D in the body? Is that a thing?
Yeah, it is the thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we lose sort of every ability that we have as we're younger starts to deteriorate as we get older, right? And most of that.
At 25, that's when mitochondria starts taking the plunge, and you can't really avoid that,
Exactly.
right?
So, our bones get weaker, our muscles get weaker, our cognition gets weaker, our vision, our digestion, our energy levels, all these things are a natural response to aging, as our heteroplasmy rate inevitably increases as we get older. We just have to know how to mitigate that, how to actually slow that down, because in a modern environment, it's happening a lot sooner, right? For young people are actually aging much faster because they live in an artificial environment.
It's amazing how quickly it's happening now, and a lot of the metabolic disorders are popping up younger and younger and younger. And
Yeah, exactly.
that's why this information is so vital, because we have a major health crisis going on right now, and we're being told one thing, and we're missing so much right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, like we know all of our mitochondrial densities in our brain, right? Or at least the vast majority of it, and also in our heart.
And the ovaries for women, yeah.
Most of our mitochondria. And, mitochondria make all the energy in your body, or most of it. We can get into easy water and how we directly tap into the sun's energy whenever you're outside naked. But, if all that is in your brain, what happens in, so-called pandemic that we're in, and people get, a so-called positive PCR test, or they end up acquiring something like COVID. What do people do right now, right? They go home and they take 2 weeks off, and they spend 16 hours a day watching Hulu and looking at Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Nonstop. And then we say we have this problem with something called long haul COVID that they're calling it, right? Well, is it really a respiratory virus that's causing you to have these long-term symptoms? Or is it because you trashed your mitochondrial redox from being in an artificial environment, staring at blue light for 2 weeks straight, right? Which one
Right.
is it?
Right. That, I always talk about gaining weight during 2020. I gained about 25 pounds or so. I was 20 pounds during the pandemic. And what was I doing? I was inside on my phone, Instagram, TV, afraid, like not going outside. And yeah, I didn't change my diet a whole hell of a lot. I actually didn't go on sugar and carb binges and eat all that crap. I stayed primarily carnivore and still gained 20 pounds. And this year I've lost 25 pounds. Again, haven't really changed much about how I've been eating, but religious about sunrise, sunset, sun exposure, turning off Wi-Fi, EMFs, all the stuff that we've been talking about. Like I said, I'm so blessed to connect with you guys. I'm going to be interviewing Carrie in a couple weeks about the easy water stuff because she's such a great on that. I'm so excited. I know you guys are going to talk soon too, which I'm going to be like waiting to hear that convo. But
Recording on Friday, so I really look forward to it.
I can't wait to hear that. That's going to be such a great conversation. But instead of like diving in and saying, we are looking at this and saying this is the cause of this, we have to really look at what's going on in our environment. And you make so many amazing valid points here that I think people hopefully will start to turn their thinking a little bit and make some actual valid changes,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope this information helps. I really appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll, I'm sure I'm going to do a screen record of this and put it up onto YouTube, and I'll send you a copy too if you want a digital copy. And yeah, hopefully this helps a lot of people, and maybe we'll have another conversation that'll come off the questions from this from this one. I'm sure we will. So
yeah, thank you for that. I'll talk to you later, Sarah.
okay, have a great day.
Later.
Bye.